Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Well, as been predicted for many months now, AIPAC has claimed their first scalp. Jamaal Bowman has been voted out, lost his own re-election in his own district by over a dozen points. Interestingly, a few months before the election, the congressional district maps for that area in New York had been redrawn, and the white media was reporting, though complaining was more like it, that the map was slanted in Bowman's favor because it included a black enclave. That's what the coverage was then, but apparently things must have become a lot more balanced in the last few months because they're not mentioning that anymore, so they were already setting up the narrative, though, that Jamaal Bowman was being given an unfair advantage because of black voters. And this was also the line of rhetoric that his white challenger seized on, using racial code words and phrases, saying that Bowman enjoyed, quote, an obvious ethnic benefit. And the white media was all the way on code, calling this white challenger a centrist. Yeah, with rhetoric like that, that's definitely center rhetoric, right? Nothing biased about that. So when you hear me describe so-called white moderates as casual racist, that's because the white media does the same thing. So they're basically going on the record about it. For the white media, when you spout anti-black racial rhetoric, that's what constitutes a centrist. So as long as you don't just out and out say nigger, the white media is fully willing to lie and claim that anti-black mouthpieces are centrist. By the way, have you ever heard the white media say that anyone who criticizes Israel is a centrist? I'm just asking for a friend. But this guy Latimer's rhetoric about black people, it reminds me of Hillary Clinton and her hard-working white people line from back in the day. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about exactly why it is that Jamaal Bowman lost his seat. Some of it's been okay, a lot of it has been erroneous, but this race came down to two factors. The first and most obvious, it's the money, stupid. AIPAC had been declaring for several months now that they're targeting black politicians and that they were going to be using the one thing they had plenty of. AIPAC doesn't have any votes, so what they got plenty of is money. And you can tell the white media is fully supportive of that particular message because they just kept repeating that line about AIPAC's deep pockets as if that was the one and only thing that mattered. This kind of coverage is meant to intimidate others, that when AIPAC comes after you, well, their deep pockets are a guarantee that they'll beat you by outspending you. But is that really true? Donald Trump demonstrated not once but twice that just because your opponents have the lion's share of the campaign money doesn't mean that they automatically win. The GOP establishment poured oceans of cash into Trump's competitors not once but twice, and 2 times they failed utterly. So while campaign money is very important, it's not the sole deciding factor as to who wins the election. Usually all that campaign money is meant to make up for the fact that these people don't usually have grassroots support. It's meant to pay for a bunch of carpet bombing them with propaganda. That's what the money is meant to do. If your ground game is razor sharp and you make sure that you've got your grassroots political support in place, that has far more to do with who wins the election than just strictly speaking about who spends the most money. AIPAC solidified their support for that Latimer character. Bowman, on the other hand, did like most black politicians in America do. He went out of his way to keep the black grassroots at arm's length until he felt that he had absolutely no other choice than to actually engage with them. See, people like Bowman, they don't see black voters as their support and salvation. They see black voters as a problem, a political liability, an obstacle that they have to avoid and try to work their way around. And it's not lost on anyone that AIPAC deliberately chose a white candidate to be their stalking horse for this particular operation. That's the entire point of this little racial political exercise, to show those Negroes in Congress that they can be easily replaced, and to show that AIPAC or any other Israeli-aligned entity can rally angry white voters against them. This was about demonstrating that AIPAC can racially purge Congress of black members who aren't obedient enough. But then again, they couldn't have done it without these self-interested individuals setting themselves up for a fall. Last October, Jamaal Bowman showed everybody what he was for when he pulled the fire alarm in order to delay or derail a vote on a spending bill because Republicans controlled the House and were trying to pass their version of the spending bill, and the Democrats wanted more time to review it because they didn't want the Republicans to front-load the bill with all kinds of pork for themselves. That's the Democrats' job. Bowman wound up having to face charges for that, and he pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor. He was so determined to delay that spending bill that he was ready to go to jail for it, or at least get dragged into court. But I'll tell you right now, that's not the problem that I have with his little stunt. In fact, I actually would have been supportive of it if it wasn't for the fact that he never ever did anything like that for reparations. In fact, he's never done anything like that for anything that would benefit black people. Oh, this guy is such a man of the people. Oh, he feels so much for the people. His heart bleeds to the point that he's willing to go to jail, but not for anything that would benefit black people. He didn't call himself pulling any fire alarms as a means to try to delay or to even provoke a vote for something as basic and common sense as an anti-black hate crime law. He was ready to go to the mat, to go to jail, to be a hero for the left, but not for black people. He has never and would never show that same level of zeal and determination for anything that would benefit black people. And that's the problem that I have with Jamaal Bowman. And it's also the problem that everybody has with the congressional black talkers in general. Speaking of that gang of do-nothings, Negro Jim Clyburn, America's favorite sharecropper, refused to endorse Jamaal Bowman. That decrepit old fossil is a political whore of the lowest rank, and he knows what side his biscuits are buttered on, and he loves having AIPAC slather it on heavy for him. See, there's no honor among thieves. We talk about the $40 million slaves in pro sports, but the same thing goes for professional politics. And they sell out for a hell of a lot less than $40 million. At least pro athletes have a marketable skill that people will actually pay money for. These political prostitutes' only skill is kissing white power's hairy, crusty behinds. That's it. I'm not in favor of AIPAC getting their way. The problem is that the white left and their Negro operatives don't use their position to do anything for us. That's the reason why they're politically vulnerable like this. They have not blocked one effort by the white right to weaponize the law against us. They haven't used their position to politically retaliate on our behalf. And they don't decide, hey, we need to pass legislation that's going to be putting money into black people's hands and into black people's neighborhoods. They don't do that. They support hate crimes laws for Asians, hate crimes laws for the LGBT community, and for Jews, but they don't support anything for black people. They're not pulling any fire alarms or disrupting Congress or going to the mat for us. So what difference does it make whether Jamaal Bowman got voted out? Tell him to get the support of those white leftists that he went to such extremes to try to impress. He went to absolute lunatic lengths to stick up for them, so clearly that's his constituency. It certainly wasn't black people in his district. See, these black politicians seem to think that merely sucking up to the white left is all they have to do. They're all trying to find ways to get into office or to remain in office without actually having to fulfill the demands of their black voters, or even having to pay lip service to their black voters. They're all trying to climb the same ladder of white approval, the white media, white donors, and white voters. Bowman, no matter how he may have tried to palm himself off, he was drawing from the same well as Karen Bass. The black politicians who were most able to withstand the kind of attacks that AIPAC carried out are the ones who stay closest to the black vote, the ones who at least publicly make it a point to pay lip service to their constituents. On the other hand, the ones who try to come off as being above that kind of thing, they just make themselves easy marks. So, AIPAC's agenda of targeting black politicians has formally begun. But keep in mind, this is not so much about who is or who isn't opposing Israel. This is about white supremacists trying to score some easy victories. AIPAC and the rest of the Israeli lobby know that if they had tried to go after a white politician and make an example out of them, then they would merely antagonize a lot of those white voters, and that there would be some actual anti-Semitism, not merely criticism of the Netanyahu regime. But notice how none of these good white Democrats are saying anything about what's happened to Jamaal Bowman. You don't see Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Hakeem Jeffries or any of them saying, wait a minute here, you guys are undermining the party solidarity. We have to be fighting Trump. Trump's the big issue here. Fascism in America's on the march. We got to stop the fascist orange man. They're not saying that. They're not saying anything. The white left, many of whom have been eager to be able to openly show their disdain for black people, they're already celebrating the prospect that other black Congress people could lose their seats. Cori Bush is the name that basically is up next. They're pointing to her as another so-called squad member who AIPAC is targeting, and they're putting big money behind an effort to get her out of office. Cori Bush made it a point to do her shea butter routine from the moment that she started campaigning for Congress. Perhaps she thought that it would endear her to the white feminist types, but all it did was to make her just another easy target. And of course, she's been far more concerned about gun control than she has been with black empowerment. And if she or other members of the squad are hoping that Hakeem Jeffries might speak up on their behalf, well, they better keep on wishing. Why is that? Because the entire reason that Hakeem Jeffries is even House Speaker is solely because he's in AIPAC's hip pocket. He takes orders. And this is why we don't waste time with Negroes on Capitol Hill. These Congressional Black Caucus members, they thought they were so smart. They thought ignoring the black grassroots was a victimless crime. that they could get away with it if they pretended to talk like us on a rare occasion. They made it a point to champion all these other groups' interests because to them that would get them in good with the white donor class. They were just playing the game. Well, AIPAC is showing that they know who their constituency is, and they've never wavered on that. They don't represent anyone's interests but their own. This is why when we talk about white supremacy, we don't break it down based on what part of Europe someone claims to come from, or what religious affiliation they are, or ethnic group. White supremacy bridges all of those lines. These silly Negroes on Capitol Hill still haven't understood that they're up against an organized offense. So they need an organized defense, and that means they have to solidify their black support. But let's be honest, these Negroes we see on TV operate out of the same playbook as the white left. When these black politicians talk about their alleged black support, it's the same handful of black preachers and black fraternity nobodies that we see the white left always talking about. So they don't have any black grassroots support. And these black politicians, having never bothered to fight for economic empowerment for black people, find themselves helpless in the face of the very folks who they fought to give billions in funding to. These idiots went and subsidized the very campaigns of the people who were going to put them out of office. No cure for stupid. And these are the same Negroes the white media had previously been singing the praises of, or rather pretending to heap praise on. Yeah, these Negroes always fall for the same old scam, thinking that the white media actually likes them, that the phony praise that the white media gives them is in fact somehow sincere, or at the very least, the Jamaal Bowmans and the Cori Bushes like to tell themselves that the white media's phony praise is deserved somehow. Well, I really am that good. I really am that smart. Well, now they're finding out that the same white media that made them could break them too. How many of these Negroes that you see on white media cable networks are saying anything about what's happening to Jamaal Bowman? How many of them are calling out AIPAC for it? How many of them are saying that the Democratic Party is not on black people's side because they can't even stand on the side of their own pet Negroes in the CBC? Nah, you don't see any of them talking like that. And that's why Jamaal Bowman finds himself in the situation that he's currently in. And it's also why Cori Bush and the other members of the squad, and by extension the rest of the Congressional Black Caucus, find themselves in AIPAC's crosshairs. After having spent so many years funneling foreign aid money to Israel, they now have to face that same money in these campaigns. Well, you know what? My recommendation for Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, and the rest is that they need to go to all of these non-black constituencies that they've been sticking up for all these years. From immigrants to feminists to gun control groups, all these pet issues of the white left that they were championing. Ask those groups to save them now. Though based on what I've seen, Jamaal Bowman will likely have plenty of company soon in the unemployment line. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Andrew Lewis, Joyce Blizzard, Atu Hammond, Corey Monroe, and Antithesis. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.